to kill the music, so music is dead. All right, here we go.
Oh yeah,
So
that's right.
yeah, I'm sorry.
Problems.
That was a Freudian slip there. I'm more professional on that most of the time. How are you?
I'm doing great. How are you this morning?
I'm doing okay. Doing okay. So far, so good. You know,
we got an unusual setup going on this morning.
Yeah, we do. We get. I told them we need to change the channel, so I changed the camera so they can get your front and my back, but it ain't working that way.
There used to be one right back there.
Yeah,
but that one's disappeared.
It's covered up back there. Speaking of Paul Schulze, who reminded me that I was about to get us all in trouble. Paul, let me see the hand back there. Paul Schulze with Worthy Road Studios. He takes care of all of our social media gatherings and get-togethers. And we are live on Facebook at the CWTAR Facebook page. You can see us right now, or you can see us later in the afternoon. It depends on how much fortification you need before you look at us.
I mean, they don't have anything else better to do but sit at home, so they might as well just pull it up and start watching it.
Yeah, I was talking to Tom Mapes this morning. He said, "What have you been doing?" I said, "Well, at this point in time, I can do the entire dialogue from about 3/4 of Hogan's Heroes shows."
Has that been your go-to?
Hogan's Heroes and Gunsmoke somehow have landed in my lap, so I don't know. But this is CWTAR's version of the Voice for Real Estate. Brent Ward is the CEO at CWTAR, which is, of course, the Central West Tennessee Association of Realtors. We talk about real estate and related things, and that's what we're going to do this morning with a special guest.
We do have a guest. Yes, sir. So with us this morning, off to my right, so if you're on the camera right here, you can probably see him. I'll wave. I'm over here on the corner over here. This is Mr. Dustin King with King and King Attorneys. Been in Jackson since long time.
Long time. I've been in Jackson since about 2000, and my wife and I started King and King in about 2005. 2005.
So been doing this a long time. So I have a little bit of a personal relationship with Dusty, or business relationship. I just with my old firm that I used to work for.
Yes.
We used to utilize Dusty quite a bit, as a matter of fact. And just recently, I hate to say, had to utilize Dusty again, but we won't get into that.
That's what he's there for.
That's what he's here for.
Right.
That's right. Yeah. So Dusty is one of our affiliate members there at the association office, and he has a unique. His firm has a unique thing that they do. They specialize in, but what we use Dusty real estate related for is Dusty helps out property owners and with. I'll let you take that over. You just tell them exactly what it is you do.
Part of my practice focus is what I call business and real estate related litigation. And,
there you go.
And as far as the real estate related litigation, that could be boundary line disputes. It could be breach of contract actions when you're buying or selling a home. But what you and I have worked together with is landlord tenant law.
There we go.
So we're talking about evictions and writs of possession once you get a judgment for possession, that kind of thing.
Okay. So landlord tenant. So that's something that I'm sure that people hear all the time, but the Landlord Tenant Act, which is actually a set of rules, I guess you could say, or a set of laws that are in the state of Tennessee. They don't apply everywhere, though, do they?
They do not. The Uniform Residential Landlord Tenant Act applies to, I think we're up to 13 counties now. Don't hold me to that, but I think it's 13 counties. You have to have at least 75,000 people in the county.
Okay.
I would not be surprised if eventually we do make that a statewide thing. I can't really give you a good answer as to why we don't already.
I was just going to say, would I be out of turn if I said it would probably be good for everybody if they would make that?
I think so. I advise my clients to go ahead and follow the rules of we call it ERLTA for short. I advise typically to follow those rules anyway. Just good rules of thumb, and if you follow those rules, judges, regardless of what county you're in, are probably going to be okay. With what you do.
Yeah, I tell people all the time about, like realtors and then just licensed real estate agents in the state of Tennessee. Just because you don't have the realtor R behind your name and you're a licensed agent doesn't mean when you get to court that the judge might not hold you to the same set of standards that other realtors are set, because they know that's an option you have and you chose not to do it. So,
right.
So yeah, so that would be good. So. As a landowner or a property owner, a landlord, whatever you want to call them, so you always hear horror stories and everything else, but there's protective rights out there for landlords to.
Sure, yeah. There's various ERLTA. ERLTA is really set up to try to avoid those horror stories that you hear and people really doing things they shouldn't do. I mean, I've heard of examples of of property owners coming in and removing the front door when somebody doesn't pay their rent, or removing a toith. I mean, that's really what
I think I've seen that on TV a few times.
That's right. That's what it started from. But
okay.
I mean, there are protections built into the Uniform Residential Landlord Tenant Act, as long as you follow the rules. The reality is, if you get what we'll call, and I'll put it in air quotes, a bad tenant, I mean, there's going to be a process that you have to follow. But that's really to keep everybody honest, to keep everybody on the courts like level playing fields.
Yep.
So that's really what it's about. But I mean, you have IRLTA, but you also have other rules, other laws, like the bankruptcy code. United States Bankruptcy Code has some laws built in it to protect property owners as well. That wasn't there prior to the amendments they made in 2005. So there are protections, even though Tennessee is considered to be a tenant-friendly state. If you survey the country, there are laws there in place to protect property owners.
Yeah, we like I said, in my old firm, we utilized Dusty for that, and really helped out. I've owned property myself in the past. I don't own any rental property now, residential rental property, but I do manage some commercial rental property through the association office. And there's a big difference between residential and commercial when you're dealing with tenants.
Well, that's exactly right. I mean, that's why they call it the Uniform Residential Landlord Tenant Act. It's I don't want to call it the Wild Wild West when you're dealing with commercial property, but there is a difference. There's the different set of rules, and this is just me. There's no necessarily basis, just my opinion. I think the courts tend to look at commercial property as more of an even, or I should say, I guess equal transaction. I mean, you have, in theory, two professionals.
Correct.
Two people who should be able to read and interpret a contract, a lease agreement. Where when you're dealing with residential, it's a little, may favor the property owner a little more.
Sure.
Which is why they've instituted things like IRLTA.
Gotcha. That makes sense. You mentioned lease agreements on there. Now, you have some pretty specific things that you like to see in lease agreements that you feel like that help out. You want to kind of hit on those?
Yeah,
just a little bit?
There's three big provisions that I like to see in a lease agreement, and one is what we call a waiver of notice of non-payment. Now, what that means is, Uniform Residential Landlord Tenant Act has a provision that says if in the lease agreement the tenant waives notice, because if a tenant does something wrong, the idea is you're supposed to give them notice that they've done something wrong so they can fix it.
Sure.
Give them a chance to take care of it.
Right.
But if they fail to pay the rent, you can specify in your lease that we are waiving that notice. The idea behind it is the tenant knows if they didn't pay the rent or not.
Sure they do.
So you shouldn't have to, I think it's a 14-day waiting period if memory serves me right. You shouldn't have to wait 14 days to be able to take some action to try to collect your rent, or if you have to evict that tenant. So
Gotcha.
that's one big thing I like to see in there, because otherwise it's going to delay me 2 weeks from doing what I got to do to get you into court to try to get the eviction.
Gotcha.
The other is, and I typically see it, although sometimes I don't see it correctly, is late charges.
Okay. Yes.
Under IRLTA, typically, and this is general example, rent may be due on the 1st. It's not late until the 5th. You have to give that 5-day grace period. After that 5 days, you can charge a late charge, but it can't be any more than 10% of the monthly rental. Now, it can be 10% every month if they're late 2 or 3 months, or if you occasionally see a tenant that they always pay, but they're always paying on the 15th and it's due on the 5th.
Gotcha.
So every month they're paying that late charge, but it can't be any more than 10%. And then, of course, the provision that's near and dear to my heart is the attorney fee provision. And the thing about that is, if it's not in there, you don't get it. I mean, there's no rule that just says,
you get it.
You get it. In fact, giving you more legal history than you probably ever wanted to know, there's a difference in the American approach and the English approach.
Okay.
I think the English approach is loser pays all attorney's fees. We don't buy that here in the U.S. Yeah. I guess that's one of those things when we broke away from the mainland over there, we decided we didn't want to take attorney's fees with us. I don't know why, but that's what it is. So if it's not stated in a statute, or if it's not stated in this situation in the contract, you're probably not getting legal fees if someone breaches a contract, unless it's in there. So those are three of the big ones that I'm always looking for if someone comes to me with a lease agreement that I didn't draft. Of course, if I draft it, I try to make sure, or I'm going to make sure those are in there.
Those are in there.
Right.
So let me ask you a question. This is just something that's kind of crossed my mind. So you and I have had conversations in the past, and I'm a pretty lenient landlord. I always have been. So, but now we're talking residential, right? Because it's property that I owned. Right. So as a lenient landlord that tried to give everybody the benefit of the doubt or whatever, does that ever come back to? Now keep in mind, I did not know Dusty back when I owned my rental property. There was a lot of things I wish I had known back when I owned my rental property. I'd still own it today. I finally got to the point where I was just like, I'm tired of fooling with this. I'm selling it. Yeah, because it started out great for about 2 years. It was wonderful. I couldn't have asked for better tenants, and then they left, and then everything went downhill from there. But there was, like I said, there was so much I didn't know. So, is there anything that harms you? Like for instance, you've got these provisions in there, the no waiver, that kind of stuff.
Right.
If you try to be lenient with it, because I know a lot of landlords that start out and they want to be a human, they want to have that compassion side, but then it doesn't take very long before that just disappears. And then everybody's treated the same. Is there anything that could harm you as a landlord if you're trying to be lenient and then now you're not because they're taking advantage of that?
Well, you're always going to have people that's going to try to take advantage of the situation.
Right.
That does lead to another provision that you can find in most lease agreements, and I'll paraphrase it, but it basically says, I may let you get by with it once, but that doesn't mean I have to let you get by with it every time.
Gotcha.
Okay. Now, and the language in the actual lease agreement is going to be a lot more lawyery than that.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
A lot more legalese, but that's the gist of that provision. Now, I think you're exactly right, especially with what's going on today and the uncertainty we're dealing with today. I mean, I think we all have to be human. We have to take a step back and make some considerations all the way around. But if you see someone taking advantage of the situation, I'm one that I tend to err on the side of being more aggressive.
Yes.
And there's a reason behind that. I mean, even if we weren't going through what we're going through right now, I mean, if you see someone that's behind on their rent, it's due on the 1st, it's late on the 5th, by the 10th, if this is a person that's always been on time, probably want to talk to them. Mm-hmm. If it's someone who has been habitually late or not paid, maybe it's time to take some action.
Right. Yeah.
Because by the time you've come to me, I file the action. Let's assume we're in Madison County. IRLTA applies. Typically you got to give some time to get them served with process. Judge Harvey here in Madison County likes you to give at least 3 weeks if you're going to have the sheriff's department or a constable do it. Well, now all of a sudden, we go from the 10th. Now we're adding 3 weeks. Well, we're probably at the end of the month. I've got it set for a docket call. I can get in there. If the tenant comes in and contests the action, which is entirely possible, then the judge has no option but to set it for a trial. That's going to be dictated on my calendar, on the tenant's calendar, on the court's calendar. It may be, I've had cases where I've had it tried that same week, or it may be 2 or 3 weeks down the road. So, in any time that you're looking at an eviction, I think a good rule of thumb is you're looking at a minimum of probably 2 months. Because once you get the judgment, there's another 10-day period until the judgment is final. Somebody could appeal that.
Right.
So, being lenient is great. And I think there's certainly, like I said, with what we're dealing with today, I think that's an excellent approach if the situation warrants it. However, if you are lenient, it can cost you time, because if you got 2 months, if you're already 3 months behind, it takes 2 months to get the tenant out. There may be some repairs you have to make. There may not be. There's no guarantee you're going to get a tenant the next day. I mean, you could be looking at all of a sudden you look up and you've missed out on 6 months worth of rent. So it could be a problem.
You pretty much described my whole my whole last foray into owning rental property. So yeah, I had when I first bought it, I had a tenant before I ever closed on it that somebody I knew that wanted to move in like the day I closed. So the day I closed, I had a tenant. It was completely vacant when I bought it. It was a duplex. And then the next tenant I got was really good. Used to live there a long time ago. They took care of the grass for me, cleaned out the gutters, kept the house looking good. But then they both ended up moving. And then I had to start all over again with new tenants. One side, not so bad. The other side, it was just her and her son. But her and her son turned to be her son, her mother, and her daughter, who she failed to mention. And this is a one-bedroom apartment.
Right.
And then it had one of those over and under washer and dryer units in it. And it was constantly going out. And I couldn't figure out why until I got over there one day. And there was a pile of clothes on the floor that was about 3, 4, 5 feet tall. Because that's what she was doing to earn money on the side, was washing other people's clothes using my over-under unit. So when it played out that time, I just pulled it out because that's not a requirement. You've got to have one of those.
Right.
It wasn't mentioned in the lease. It was there when she got it, but I wasn't replacing it. And I'd already placed a toilet, and I don't know how in the world you crack a toilet. And so you answered me that question, because I've moved a lot of toilets around. Those jokers are pretty sturdy.
Yes, they are.
So, just stuff like that. But like you said, by the time I got around to that point, she finally moved out on her own, so I didn't have to evict her. But I was out 6 months. But it was around Thanksgiving, then it was Christmas, then it was New Year's, and it's wintertime, and I was young. And I felt sorry for her, and I didn't want her, I didn't want to kick her out in the middle of the winter. So anyways, but yeah, it wasn't shortly after that. I didn't even get another tenant. I just put that joker up for sale and sold it. And, but now today's different, because now having been a business owner and managed a firm that had a property management department in it, which I would say I'm a firm believer in utilizing property management companies. I know it costs you a little bit of your money, but oh my gosh, is it so much more convenient that way.
Got a text if you want to.
Oh yes, we'd love to go into text.
One of our listeners out there, and this is a 3-parter, so bear with me. We'll see if we can get through this together. Part 1 of 3. I had a rental house, and now I don't, because of a renter that when he was given notice to move in June, he not only didn't move but quit paying rent. I couldn't get him out until November 1. Had to hire people to clean out the house. Had to rent 3 30-yard rolls of dumpster to haul off the stuff. He left. I was too soft.
That can happen.
Yeah.
That can
Thank
happen.
You,
and, there again, you go back to, you don't want to be hard-hearted Hannah, anytime you're doing this. However, it is a business.
Yep.
And, and that, I think, is one thing that investment property owners need to keep in mind at all times. This is a business. You're not a charity.
That's right.
You're not doing it for charitable purposes, although you want to be kind to your tenants. You want to certainly treat them with the utmost respect, and I think that's just common courtesy. But you are a business first and foremost. No one's coming to the old country store and expecting breakfast for free.
No.
And that's just the approach that you have to take, I think.
Well, and like I was talking, like the property management company, when you're the owner and they're talking to you directly, they're going to play on your emotions because you own the property. You're the one that's getting the rent, this, that, and the other. When you're dealing with a property management company, that's a business transaction. They have they don't own it. They have a job to do. They're there to make sure the property is maintained, and they'll check on it frequently. They'll make sure the filters are changed, the smoke detectors are working, and all those things that if you're trying to do it yourself, you might not be so spot on. But the main thing is when the tenant calls and says, hey, I can't pay my rent, then, property management company's like, okay, well, here's what's getting ready to happen. And they can't play on their emotions because they don't own it.
Well, property management companies have the ability to have objectivity in the situation.
Exactly. Yep.
And, I'll give you an example. And fortunately, it's not happened a lot to Jennifer and I as far as clients owing us fees, but I don't even like to represent myself. And the reason being is I am too emotionally invested in that situation to be able to look at it from an objective eye.
Right.
And I think property owners, because let's face it, this can be a sticky situation. You can get emotionally invested in this when you're standing or you're sitting here thinking this is my house that I'm letting this person live in, and now they're not fulfilling their end of the bargain. People can get irritated.
They do.
And it's nice to have that person who, number one, this is not their first rodeo.
Mm-hmm.
Property management companies, they do this for a living. They've chances are, if you're dealing with it, they've seen it. Okay, so having that objective eye is worth, in my opinion, worth more than you'll ever pay for it. Quite honestly.
Yeah. No, I agree with you 100%. If I'd still had my duplex I had, I should have turned it over to a property management company right from the very beginning and just got out of it.
Now, one warning I would say to folks who, if you hire a property management company, let them actually do their job.
Yes.
Because you do have a lot of people that want to micromanage the
Sure.
property management company.
Yes.
They know what they're doing. They've done it before. Let them roll.
We have cut people loose in the past. I'll give you an example because this is kind of a funny story. So, yeah, we picked up a property owner that owned 2 quads. So they were side by side, and and naturally when we got them, we cut our grass regardlessly. We cut it at least once every 2 weeks, unless it's a hot, wet summer, and then you got to cut it about every 7 to 8 days. Because if you don't, it just gets overgrown, right?
Right.
Well, that home, the property, the landlord was constantly calling us saying, "You're spending too much on lawn maintenance." So he was just like, "I only want it cut once a month." Well, then, of course, naturally, now you're only getting you're not getting good tenants if you're only cutting the grass once a month, because the grass is 2.5 feet tall to 3 feet, most of the time. And then it wasn't costing any less to cut the grass, because the person we hired to come cut the grass would have to walk through the grass first to pick up any cans, bottles, trash that was out there. And so, they're charging for the walkthrough. Then they have to cut it twice to get it down to a level that they can actually cut it. Mm-hmm. And, because the grass is so thick. So it's still costing the same amount of money. But, yeah, micromanaging the actual property management company, I was just like, you know what, that's enough of that. You can just take your properties and take them someplace else, because, I hated to lose 8 doors. But,
sometimes you got to do what you got to do.
You got to do what you got to do. So, and I found out it was a lot easier on this side letting the homeowner go, the property owner go, than it was when I was the landlord and letting the tenant go. But so if you just tuned in with us this morning, this is Mr. Dustin King, if you can see him on camera. Yep. And if you're wondering about our weird setup here, well, it's weird times. So
it's spacing,
things are spacing us out here. So we're going to come back with Dusty here in just a minute. In the meantime, I think we got a few sponsors here you need to talk about there.
Yes, indeed. We are listening to and watching on Facebook Live, the CWTAR website. This is the voice for real estate. Brent Ward, your host this morning, and Dusty King, our special guest. Our sponsors: Leaders Mortgage Services. Now, here again, we say it, but it's true, and it continues to be true. Mortgage rates are as low as anybody probably listening out there has ever seen them. So if you're in the market for buying a house, or now's the time to sell a house also, mortgage rates are not going to get much better than this as far as the consumer's concerned.
I think there's no floor right now. There's no, they're going to stop here. They don't really know where that stopping point is.
Doesn't appear to be at this point.
That's what I've been told anyways.
But you need to deal with someone who knows the ins and outs of that business, and Leaders Mortgage Services are those individuals. They know all of the types of mortgages that are available. They can figure out from your financial information, your work habits, your other information that you will provide to them. They will know exactly which ones fit you the best to get you the best deal. Therefore, your payments are going to be less, and you're going to be more comfortable when you walk in and out of that new house. Call them up, 215-6678. That is Leaders Mortgage Services, and let them walk you through the process today. If you're really serious about this thing and about to get out and start looking, let them pre-qualify you and tell you exactly how much house they think you can afford. Then you can shop smart. Leaders Mortgage Services. Then insurance. Now, a lot of people got a little more time on their hands right now, Brent.
Just a little bit.
Hours are cut back, or we're having to stay close to home. Now wouldn't be a bad time to drag out that insurance policy and take a look at it. Are you paying for homeowners over here, an automobile over here, and your umbrellas with somebody else, and it's just a little more than you think you need to be paying right now? Call the folks at Allstate Insurance. Angie Hooten Hughes is the agent. 668-1990 is the local phone number there. Let them take a look at that with you. I'm sure they can help you with that over the phone by giving them some critical numbers, and then let them put a package together and bundle all that together. It'll save you some time. It'll save you some headaches. You deal with one person that you can trust, and you're probably going to save some money. So let them take a look at that today. Allstate Insurance, you're in good hands with Angie Hooten Hughes. And then, of course, our attorney, Bird & Bird, they've been doing real estate law in this area since 1985, and it's what they do. Residential and commercial, title searches and insurance. Every transaction is looked at in depth by Charles Bird Sr. He's going to look at it to make sure that all of the verifications are done, all the research necessary is done. The title is good. Let you know about any covenants or restrictions on the land use or zoning or deed restrictions, whatever the case may be. They're going to make it right on the front end so that when you sign that deed or that deed is signed over to you, you know everything is like it's supposed to be legally. 424-7188, Bird and Bird. Back to you, sir.
All right. Thanks, Jimmy. Appreciate it. So we have with us Mr. Dustin King this morning with King and King Attorneys. And we've been talking about what he's been doing and what he kind of specializes in, which is a very needed service. And I can tell you, we were so happy at when we found Dusty and realized what he did, and he was just right down the road, and he's been so good to work with. But now your wife does a different line of work, so to speak.
She does. She is. She does a lot of family law, which would be your the stuff nobody wants to talk about, the divorce, child custody. She does a lot of adoptions as well, and then she does some wills and estates.
Okay.
I also do some family law, including the collaborative divorce process, but I've kind of have more of a 50-50 balance between what we've already discussed and family law. She is probably more 90-10, so she does quite a bit of it.
Well, and it's funny. We talked just barely right before we got ready to come on the show a little bit because I couldn't remember exactly what Jennifer did, but that kind of plays into the real estate world too, because you just mentioned 3 things that you guys do when somebody comes in to talk about a will, and this is pretty important because real estate a lot of times is involved in these things.
That's right.
And so, what's the 3 things that you recommend when people come in?
Well, we have typically, if somebody comes in, and if we're not talking about drafting some sort of specialized trust or something like that, I think a will, a living will, and a power of attorney are really what we try to give as a package for someone coming in looking at doing some basic estate planning. The will does what you think the will does. When you pass away, that's saying who's going to get what. The power of attorney, there's some options on the power of attorney. You're giving someone the authority to really make the decisions that you can make yourself.
Sure.
And the idea is, if you're incapacitated, unable to make those decisions, the will doesn't kick in as long as you're alive. So we've got to have some instrument there that's going to help take care of those things. So this can include not just from a financial standpoint, but also health care decisions. Mm-hmm. And one option that you have is, do you want to make that power of attorney effective immediately, or do you want to wait until 2 doctors have said you're unable to make those decisions for yourself?
Okay, all right.
To give you a funny story, I had a husband and wife come into my office one time, and they had obviously not talked about which decision they were going to make on that.
Sure.
And the husband chimed in first, says, well, I just want to make it effective immediately. I trust her just fine. I want to make it effective immediately. She looked at me and says, I want 2 doctors to say I can't do it before I turn it over to him. So he kind of gave her a look, but that's the way it went down, is she had the doctors. And then lastly is the living will, and that's going to make decisions about, do you want one question we ask is, do you want the assistance of pain-relieving drugs, even if it's going to kind of hasten your death? Mm-hmm. I've never had anybody decline that. Do you want burial or cremation? Do you want organ donation or no? And if you do want organ donation, do you want it for specific purposes? Those kind of issues. And the things to think about. I mean, and really, you had mentioned, do I really need these now when I'm healthy and everything?
Right.
Sure, I think you do. I think the analogy I gave is you never know if you're going to step out in front of a bus tomorrow. I mean, anything can happen at any time. I mean, look at what's going on now.
I was just getting ready to say I didn't want to be a producer of fear, but because I'm not believing in that. But that is just. These are the things we don't like to deal with. That's right. These are things that we don't like to talk about. My mother-in-law is like one of the absolute worst. I mean, the minute you mention anything along these lines, she just turns around and bolts the other direction. Of course, what she doesn't realize is that's causing more trouble than good, because she has 2 children, my wife and then my wife's brother. So if something was to happen to her,
well, and making those decisions on the front end, to me, is always better than. You got to keep in mind, when your mother-in-law, for example, when she passes away, I mean, obviously her kids are going to be in an incredibly emotional situation.
Yes.
And with that, tempers can flare, things can happen, people can say things that's taken wrong, even though that's not the way it was intended. And, a little planning, a little preparation can make it so much easier on your loved ones in the long run when that time comes.
Yeah.
It really can.
Yeah. Well, if you just tuned in with us, or we're getting close to the end of the show, we have Mr. Dusty King with us with King and King Attorney. So, Dusty, how can people get in touch with you? What's the best way?
Give us a call. Our number is 731-664-6864. You can visit our website at www.kingplc.com. That's King, P as in Paul, L as in Larry, C as in Charlie.com. Or we are also on Facebook. You can track us down there.
Awesome. Perfect. Well, Dusty, we appreciate you being with us this morning. Now, y'all are only seeing people on special request, I would assume, right?
Well,
this very
we are.
minute.
We're doing a lot of phone consultations, and of course, we're utilizing Zoom.
Yeah, like
so
everybody.
we can do the video conferencing. So, to be honest with you, from the Zoom standpoint, we can do a lot of what we could do if you were sitting across the conference room table from us. So, from that standpoint, we're business as usual. It's just a little different.
A little different, yeah. Same with us at the board office. So, Dusty, appreciate you being with us this morning.
Thanks for having me.
I always appreciate you being an affiliate member. And I guess with that, Jimmy, I guess we're done for this Monday.
Stick a fork in this one. And we'll be back next Monday on Facebook Live also. Thanks again to Paul Schulze with Worthy Road Studios. If you need streaming or professional audio-video services, Paul Schulze is the man you need to call, 499-1730. You guys be safe, and we'll see you next Monday.
Thanks, Jimmy.
Thank you.